So today what we're making is a fall path with fall trees. The first thing we're going to do is create what's called a horizon line. So a horizon line is where the ground, typically where the ground meets the sky. In this instance, there's hills, so it's basically where the ground meets these hills. Now my line isn't perfectly straight here. You're also going to notice I'm drawing in marker. I'm drawing in marker so you can see what I'm doing. I want you to draw in pencil. The reason I want you to draw in pencil is because if you make a mistake, then you could easily erase it. The marker you can see better on camera. So here, this line is slightly more than halfway up the page. So I'm doing it right about here. Again, remember, this isn't completely straight. I'm not using a ruler for this. If you think of the grass and you think of the ground, it's not always straight. Next, what I'm going to do, so remember this is the horizon line, I'm going to put a dot, and I'm putting a dot towards the middle of this horizon line. So what that is, that's called a vanishing point. What a vanishing point is, it's the point where objects begin to vanish. So if you look at this road, it is the same size throughout, but as it gets further and further away, it looks smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually it completely vanishes. It disappears. So this here is the vanishing point. So that's what we're drawing our lines to. I want you to use a ruler for this part. If you don't have a ruler, you can use something else that's straight. Even the edge of your colored pencil box would work, or a folder, anything like that. So I'm taking my fingers, I'm going to put 2 fingers here. The reason I'm doing that is just to show you what space and what size, where to put your lines. So I'm drawing to that dot. Remember, the dot is called the vanishing point, and I went about 2 fingers in. It doesn't have to be exact, but you want it kind of close. The other side, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going about 2 fingers in. So I'm drawing, remember I want that dot there. I'm going to take my 2 fingers, I'm turning my ruler until I get to that point. And then I'm just going all the way to the edge. So this is for the path. Next, what I'm going to do is we're going to do the front trees. So what I want you to notice with this is the trees, look at the size. And something else that happens when something is further away, it appears smaller. So in this instance, the trees that are in the background, look at the size. If I slide my fingers over, this is so much smaller. The trees in the front are pretty large, and then it's medium, and then as you get further back, they're small. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're starting with the front trees, and then we're going to work our way back. So the front trees are kind of big. When you are drawing the trees, what I want you to think about is the letter Y. The letter Y splits off. Now this one has a little wavy line, but if you look in here, there's a whole bunch of letter Y's throughout the drawing. And we'll go over this more later. So basically the branches split off, and it just reminds me of a whole bunch of letter Y's over and over and over again, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to start with the tree right here closest to us. I'm going to go about, say, 4 fingers up right about here. I'm centering it with this line and the edge of my paper. So I'm going to go up. I'm going to stop right about here. So notice, like, this is the top of my paper. I still have a little bit of room. And remember how I said the letter Y? So what I'm going to do here, it's not exactly a Y, but it's similar. And I'm going to go like that. So that is my first step. And after I draw these lines, and I am going to thicken the trunk of the tree, I'm going to thicken the branches, and I'll show you how to do that. Remember, you're using a pencil. I'm using a marker just so you can see this better. After you do your pencil lines, you will eventually trace with marker also. So now I'm making more letter Y's. So see how this is its own letter Y here, and I'm even going to do one here. So that's like a small letter Y. That's it within this branch. Here I'm also going to split it off again to create another letter Y. And then I'm going to do that one more time right here. So now what I want to do, this is pretty skinny. This looks like more like a twig. This doesn't look like a tree. So now what we're going to do is thicken this up. And to do that, I'm going to draw a line on each side of this, which is going to be the trunk. Notice how I'm following it up. As I get towards the top, I'm making it where my line is closer and closer to that original line I drew. And the reason I'm doing it is because it gets thick. A tree is thicker at the bottom than it is at the top, and branches gradually tend to get skinnier. So now what I'm going to do is on this side, I'm doing the same thing. So I'm going out a little bit from this line, and I'm kind of following the same shape, but then I'm going to arch around, and I'm going to get closer and closer to that line until eventually my lines connect. Here I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm not going out too far, just a little. I'm also going to do that here and here. The bottom of my tree, I'm just going to do this wavy line. So that is the first one. Remember, at the end we are going to color this, so this will be solid. You won't see this, so you'll notice here you don't see those lines. Now I'm going to do the one that's on this side. So they're lined up pretty close, and probably about here I'm going to start the base of this tree. Now this one's going to be slightly different because this one is a little wavy. So I'm doing this first line. Now my next line, it's approximately the same height, but I'm doing a wavy line, but it still sort of looks like a letter Y, only it's a little wiggly. Now I am splitting this off again. So I did that with like another letter Y. I'm going to do that again up here. And notice how there's a Y here, there's a Y here, and then I'm just going to branch it off here. Okay, so now the next step, and if you want to add more branches, feel free to add more branches. The next step now, I'm repeating the process again. So now I'm going to draw a line on each side of this first line, what I want to call a twig, and we're going to make it more like the trunk of a tree. So I'm following the same shape. I'm also following where it splits off. Now this is the wiggly one, and once I get closer to the edge, I'm getting closer and closer to that line until eventually it meets together. It kind of comes together in a point. Now I'm going to do that for all of these branches. And remember, it doesn't matter that I'm drawing on this because eventually this will be colored. Okay, so that is the beginning of our other tree. I also want to put a line on this side to make this trunk thicker. And the bottom, I'm going to do this slightly wavy line here. So those are our first trees. Remember, these are the largest. The next one's, it goes medium and then small. So next we're working on these two trees here that are towards the middle. So for this one, let me adjust this a little bit. Okay, so for these ones, I'm going up a little bit right about here, so towards the middle of this space from the horizon line to the bottom of your page, about halfway up there. So again, I'm thinking of the letter Y. I'm going up. It's okay that I'm overlapping, so notice I drew on top of that. That's okay. I'm gonna split that off. It's approximately the same height, slightly lower. And then I'm just going to split it off again in a few spots. And remember, you can do it wherever you want. It doesn't have to be the same spots that I'm splitting it off. Okay, so next we're going to make this fatter again. Not quite as wide as the front ones, a little smaller. Remember, as something is further away, it gets smaller and smaller. The reality is it's still the same height, it just appears smaller. So each branch, you're starting a little bit thick, and then you get closer and closer until it kind of comes to a point. So that is your second tree. You could do the bottom. Remember, I just did a wavy line. You can also zigzag up and down and create a grass if you want. So for this next one, I'm going to line it up approximately the same as this tree. And I'm going up. This one I'm going to do another wavy line where it has a little bit of a wave. And then I'm going to, again, think of the letter Y. This looks a little bit different for this one. And I'm going about there. And then I'm going to do some more spots where I split it off and create more of that letter Y shape. Next, what I'm going to do is thicken this one up just like we did with the other one. So both sides of this line, I'm going to go out a little bit, up. And remember, the base of this tree is a little more narrow. It's a little skinnier than the last. And once I get towards the top, I'm getting skinnier and skinnier until eventually my lines meet. Okay, so that is the second tree. Now I'm going to finish off that base again, just do a wiggly line there. I think I'm going to put one more piece coming off of here. Okay, so remember the size comparison. This is tiny in comparison to this. It's a lot smaller. So for this one, I'm starting right about here on each side, and I'm going up, creating that letter Y again, and then I'm going to split it off in a few spots, and then I'm going to make it thicker, but not as thick as the other one. Actually, this one I'm only going to go up one side just because it's smaller, and I don't really need it as thick as the other one. So that is that one. I'm going to do one more approximately the same size, in about the same spot on the other side. So I'm going up. And I'm creating more little letter Y's in there. And then I'm going to make it thicker. This one I'm actually going back and making that slightly thicker. Okay, so remember, this is not as big as the other trees because it's further away. It just appears smaller than the other ones. Okay, so those are your trees. I know these look kind of weird right now in comparison to this. The next thing we're going to do is the top of this tree is kind of, it's different. It's an easy way to do these leaves. So what I want you to notice is these up and down, kind of like letter U over and over again, or even little W's. This is the next shape we're doing, but what I want you to notice is how far there's this amount of space here on each side. This side's slightly more. This is about 4 of my fingers. This is about 3, okay? You can do it how you want, but make sure you have space in between because you want to allow room for these mountains in here, okay? So I'm gonna go about 3 fingers up. It doesn't matter if I draw on top of these trees because eventually I'm going to color them. So I'm just doing these. It's just going up and down, kind of like the letter U, or a whole bunch of W's. So that is that part. We are getting close to being done with the drawing part. The next thing we're going to do is some hills. So my hills, you can do it how you want. I'm going to go right about there. It's okay that I'm drawing over the trees because remember, eventually I'm coloring those. Alright, so that is the rest of the drawing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to color this. Okay, I'm going to start with coloring in all these trees black. Alright, so I have one tree left to color in. That definitely changes it a lot. It makes it look better. I'm making this one slightly thicker. Just looked skinnier than my middle one, and I want my front one the biggest, the fattest. Okay, so that's the rest of the black part. Now what I'm doing, I want to do this top part, and this is all the leaves on the top. There's not much detail to it. I actually did it kind of scribbly. And red, yellow, and orange, those are the colors you need. So you'll need red, yellow, and orange. You could do it how you want. If you want to use colored pencils, you can, crayons, or markers, whatever materials you have available. So this is the way I'm doing it. I'm going to start with the orange. And all I'm doing is a whole bunch of random little scribbles, and they're all different sizes, actually different shapes. Some are bigger, some are smaller. And I'm just doing this all over. And I'm also going to follow this same shape. I'm kind of tracing it with the orange. And I'm doing the same thing on the edge here. I'm tracing it with the orange. But then I'm going to do some scribbles there. More like what we were doing earlier, these little wiggly scribbles. And I'm doing the same here. So I'm doing quite a few that are close to where I drew those lines. There is no right way. You do not have to do these in the exact same spot. Please don't even attempt to make them in the same spot as mine. This is just really random. Wherever you want is fine. Just remember where you did those orange lines, so where you followed either the edge of the paper or this, just do a few kind of close to lose that clean line that was there. I'm going to do some dots too. And next I'm going to take my red. And I'm going to do the same thing again. Only this time I'm not tracing those edges. So I'm just making a whole bunch of random squiggly spots. And it doesn't have to be a certain way. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Some little dots too. Remember, please don't even attempt to do these in the exact same spot. It's up to you where you put your marks. I'm going to go through and do some more dots. Okay, so now I'm going to go over it with yellow. And basically what I'm doing, I'm using markers. You can do this however you want, with whatever art supplies you have available. And all I'm doing is coloring over this. I'm just turning it to the side to make it easier for me to color. You can hold your paper however you want. So basically you want no white spots. You want to color this whole thing in with yellow now. Okay, so after that, the next thing you do, you decide what color you want your sky. So for mine, I did a light blue color. So I went in and I did light blue in here. You can do whatever color you want. My only advice is don't do something too dark because you want to still be able to see your trees. I did hills in here. I did the hills green. You can do this how you want. And I also have the green grass in here. So the road I went with brown, and towards the back of the road I went over it a little more so it was a little bit darker towards the back. You can do this however you want. Another option, instead of it being like a dirt road, you could make it where it's just more like a street, and I can show you really quick how to do that. Again, you're going to find that vanishing point, and remember, this part is optional. You do not have to do it this way. So you'll find that, and then you'll draw from that vanishing point down. I actually went a little too far over. Let me correct that real quick. You want it to be kind of centered, and I just went a little far over. As you can see, you always see my art when I'm done. I do make mistakes as I'm going, and that's okay. So I'm going to go in a little more, probably right about here. And then I'm going to do that again. Okay. So I'll leave this road. You could either have it with a solid line down the middle, or if you want to break that line up where it goes black in between the line like that, you can do that. Or you could just, if you want to do it this way, I would just color this solid yellow. It's okay if you go slightly out of the lines, because black is what you're using next. And remember, this is optional. You don't have to do it this way. So then what you would do is color the rest in black, if this is the way you choose to do it. Then it looks more like a street than just a dirt road, or more like a path, which is what it looked like before. This looks like you could drive down it. This marker's getting a little dried up. Let me see if I have a different one. All of my markers are getting dried up. And remember, if you wanted to leave it solid brown and do it that way, you can. If you have a different idea, that's okay too. Maybe you want to make it a sidewalk or use a different color, that's fine. So since my marker is drying up, I can't do that solid the way I would like. What I want to do with this line, instead of having it just one solid line, I'm going to break it up, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm taking this ruler and I'm going to go like straight across. And then I'm going to color that in, and that's just basically breaking up the line. Usually on a road it's more like that. But what happens with these lines and what happens in a distance is they'll get closer and closer together and smaller. Until eventually it completely vanishes and you no longer see it, okay? I wish this was darker. I'm going to darken it a little bit because that is going to bother me. So then the next thing you do is you color your grass and your sky however you want it. So if you want your sky blue, you can color your sky blue. If you want it to be a different color, that's okay too. For mine, so these are two options. That's with a road, and that is with more like a dirt road or a dirt path. So you can do your sky however you want, whatever color you want. So this part you would color blue or whatever you want your sky, and then color your hills and the grass, and then you are done. When you're all the way done, make sure you post a picture in Seesaw.